Welcome student to the classes in economics. The very first topic that you need to learn is the primary and secondary data. In the lower classes obviously you have learned what is data. Data are simply facts and figures, right? But here we shall discuss the types, that means the primary and secondary data. To understand the difference between primary and secondary data, let us first analyze the situation. Suppose you want to know the marks of a student in a class. So let's say there are 50 students in a class. So marks of all the 50 students in a class you want to know. Okay, so marks of all students in a class. Okay, tell me what will do to collect the data. You can follow two ways broadly. One, you can individually approach all the students, individually go to all the students, collect the data, write it in a table. The one thing you can do. Second, you can go to the class teacher of that particular class, and from him or her you can take the data, isn't it? So what happened in the first approach? In the first approach you have collected the data yourself. You are the investigator and you have collected data yourself. In the second case you have not collected data yourself, but what you have done, you have used the data collected by someone else, isn't it? And that is why the second type of data will be called secondary data. The first one is called the primary data, because the data that you have collected is a raw data, fresh data, isn't it? The data that you have collected over here is a finished data, or you can say decorated data, because this has been already collected by someone else. Getting it? Okay, so if you read something from a newspaper, that is secondary data. If you watch news in the news channels, that is a secondary data. If you are learning something from this particular video, that is also a secondary data. Then what are the examples of primary data? One very popular example of primary data, so let me write the examples here. Primary data, one very popular example is census. You must have heard population census. Now what happens in a census? People from the government, they go to your home, they collect the data, how many people are there, how many more than 60, how many infants, how many school going children, how many male, how many female, right? So this data is a primary data, because here the investigator collects the data himself or herself. Now, what are the examples of secondary data? I have already given many. The news that you watch in news channels, the YouTube, if you're learning something from YouTube, that is a secondary data. Then if you're writing notes from Google, that is also an example of secondary data. Okay, so in brief, if I want to understand the difference between primary data and secondary data, what will be my points then? So primary data and secondary data, what are my points? The first point is that it is raw, and it is not raw, it is rather decorated data. Okay, the second point of difference can be, here a lot of time and money has been spent to collect the data. Here time and money has been saved rather. The third point of difference can be, primary data is collected for an original purpose. The census is done for, population census is done for know the number of people residing in a country. Secondary data is not done for an original purpose. It can be used for, it is not done for an original purpose, rather it can be used for varying purposes. It can be used for many purposes. For example, the YouTube channel that you are watching, this can be used by you for something and by someone else for another reason, isn't it? So these are broadly, these are differences between primary data and secondary data. All right, I hope you have learned something today. Let's meet and clarify some more concepts in the next video.